if you have any issues, please let me know. Otherwise, like, okay, I can move forward. I do believe like you don't have any issues, right? Perfect. Okay, so let me introduce myself. I am Shiva, and I do have like 15 years of experience. This is my 15th year in the software industry, and I started my career as a C developer, and then like I've been in I worked in various projects like C, C++, V, C++, and then I jumped over to J2E, and then I even developed a few mobile apps, and finally, like, okay, I ended up like in settling down in the full stack web development. So right now I'm in a very good position in a software firm, and then like, okay, my main hobbies are like coding for sure, and then learning new technologies. I'm a techno enthusiast, so like I've been touching various tools in the software industry, and I've been working like a, what do you say, like uh, a learner kind of thing, right? So any new technology in the market, I've been like, okay, very enthusiastic to learn it. Okay, so that's all about me. But you can reach out to me, like, okay, I can leave my email details for any questions. Like, okay, if you have, you can please reach out to me. That's about me. Fine. So, okay, let's start our Angular course, right? So, in this course, basically, this course is not about like just learning the Angular, right? So, I mean, this is my 15th batch in Angular, and over these 15 batches, like, okay, I've been learning myself, and also at the same time, like, okay, teaching others. So, the way I see this Angular is like it's not just like, okay, developing a program or something. It's about learning the best practices. So not that like, okay, you'll be getting only the knowledge of Angular by the end of this course, but also like you'll be learning the best practices. And like, okay, what are the core concepts which you have to take care, like how you design an Angular application on all that sort of thing, right? So you'll be learning a lot in this course for sure. And then like so why we need this framework is the first and the foremost question that most of the people ask me, right? The framework, this framework, before this framework, like, okay, how this whole front end development has evolved. So we need to have some kind of idea, right? So in the initial days, like, okay, in 90s or like, okay, in the early 2000s, people used to develop by using simple HTML and vanilla JavaScript, right? And it used to be cumbersome. It used to be very hard to maintain the application, especially on the front end. There is a lot of progress which is made on the back end, like on the server side. Like we do have like, okay, the languages like Java, C# and all those things, but the front end has not evolved at that speed when compared to the server side technologies. Okay, so then like, okay, in the early 2000s, people realized like the front end is for sure, like, okay, people really like cool apps, right? So then they started like writing libraries. One such library which changed this whole front end development is jQuery. So jQuery is a library, it's not a framework. So there is a difference between a framework and a library. You know it, right? I mean, library, basically it provides you the set of API kind of thing, like, okay, where you can use it, and you can get the relevant information, or like you can perform some CRUD operations. That's all that like the library does. That's what jQuery does. Now, when it comes to the framework means like, okay, you need to know like few things, like how it brings the discipline into the project. So Angular is one such framework. Initially, like how Google really developed it, right? So they took all the pains like, okay, in the front end development. So what are all the things like, okay, which developers are facing, right? The pain and all the like, okay, complex stuff like which they are doing on the front end development. They took all those pain points and they developed this Angular JS framework. Earlier it was Angular JS 1.x, and then they started writing the frameworks. right? And it slowly evolved. And over the period of time, it brought some discipline into the front-end UI development. So that's how, like, okay, the AngularJS has evolved. And that's how, like, the frameworks started building. Earlier to AngularJS, like, okay, there were a few frameworks like Backbone and few other frameworks. But AngularJS is the one, like, okay, which got the traction. Now, AngularJS was very good framework, but it had its own disadvantages. One of the major disadvantage with AngularJS 1.x is like with the performance. It's not meant for mobile. It's actually meant for developing the desktop applications. So what Google thought was like, we need to like improve this framework, and slowly like, okay, they transition to the Angular. But in between this transition from AngularJS to Angular 2, right, there is one more framework like, okay, which got popular, and that framework, actually you should call it as a framework and a library, that is nothing but React. So React came from Facebook, and Angular 2 came from Google. So React has its own market. Angular 2 has also got its own market. Now, in the market, there are only two frameworks. So when you talk broadly in the UI framework world, right? So there are only two frameworks. One is React, and the other one is Angular. So you had to be popular, or like you had to be familiar with any one of these frameworks. So React is its own market. I'm not saying that okay, React is like okay, totally dumb kind of framework. It has its own market. That one very fast compared to the React. But that said, anyone should be fine. If at all, like if you're looking for a good UI front-end job, right? You learn one of these UI frameworks. That's my suggestion. Okay, so what these frameworks really provide, right? Now, as you can see on the screen, right? So earlier, like, okay, we don't have the concept of like, okay, how to divide the tasks into different modules. We were talking about the modules only on the server side aspect of it, right? So if you develop any Java or like a J2E based application, you know, like, okay, how to develop a jar and what are all the things like, okay, you want to like package inside the jar, or in case of C#, it's a DL, right? So that DLL or jar, you call it as a module, right? I mean the term module, it changes, right? The definition of the module has been changing now. But that's how like, okay, people used to call it. Okay, I'm giving this particular module. You use it, and then like, okay, whatever you would like to do, you can do, right? So that's what the module is. Now, that's on the server side. So you can provide a jar or a var or a ER file, okay, and then get the things done. But on the UI side, there is no such concept called module. So what is the definition of a module, right? So a module is nothing but it is a set of components, set of directives, set of services, okay, all packaged in one unit. That is called as a module. That is what the UI definition of module really means. As you can see in the slide, right? So we are okay. So you can see like okay, there is a banking app over here. Now this banking app, it has various modules, right? So it has a reporting module, it has a deposits module, transaction, and the loan module, right? And as you can see in these modules, each of these modules, they have these components over here, right? So I mean, a few of them are in red color, a few of them are in blue. Okay, so don't worry about like okay, what they really do, but there is a subtle difference. Like okay, we will discuss later in the course. Like okay, why I like okay label them as blue and a few of them as red. Okay, but on a high level, like these are the components. The small boxes are the components, and all these components are packaged inside the reporting model. It's not only the components; we also have the directives. Now, the difference between a directive and a component, let's not go into that detail for now. We'll discuss that later in the course. But for now, keep it simple. A model is nothing but it's a set of components or directives and services within it, right? Now, banking app, it does use the reporting module. That means once it imports this particular module, it can use the components of that particular module. That's what the definition is, okay? And same is the case with the deposits module. So if at all, if you have to introduce one more module, you can introduce it easily. You can develop that module with the components and hook it to your bank account. Okay. Now this is a typical Angular application, Angular 2 application, and how it looks like. Fine. Now there is a cross collaboration between the modules again. That means like, okay, if loan module wants to use the reporting module, it can pretty much use it. Okay. So a particular module can use other modules again. Okay. So now you can see like whenever you're developing any software, right, or any kind of UI piece, right, now you can divide your work. You can say like, hey, this module it will be taken care by 10 developers of one team. And the other module will be taken care by some 10 developers belonging to the other team. So now the work can be easily classified. That is one thing. And the other thing is like, okay, Angular 2, it has improved the performance a lot when compared to the AngularJS 1.x. Now there is a difference between why I'm calling AngularJS 1.x and Angular 2. In Angular 2, from Angular 2, it's no more called as AngularJS. Okay, it's called as Angular 2 plus, which means Angular 2, Angular 4, Angular 5, and so on. Okay, now where is this journey of Angular 2 is really going, right? So now before going that further, right? So let me explain like, okay, what are all the main things which Angular 2 has really developed, right? At first, AngularJS was only meant for the desktop. On mobile, it failed literally. I mean, it was nowhere. It was nowhere like it was nowhere like, okay, when it was being deployed in the mobile world. So, but Angular 2, they completely changed the underlying design of it, and they made it compatible to the mobile. That means like you can develop any hybrid apps by using Angular 2, and also like, okay, there are like few frameworks right now in the market which does use Angular 2 behind the scenes, and they can generate an iOS app, Android app, or a Windows Phone app. Okay, so it reached to that particular maturity level that they can use this framework, they can extend this framework to any sort of development, be it a mobile development or the desktop app development. Fine. So that's a brief history about the Angular 2. If you have any questions, you can please go ahead and you can ask me before going further.
Yeah. Hey, Shiva, I asked one question. What are the key differences between React versus AngularJS?
Okay. Angular, React, actually, it has, okay, before telling that, right, so any framework you develop, obviously, like, okay, at the end, it has to be a JavaScript, okay, because browsers can understand only JavaScript. When it comes to the UI, when you are deploying any app on the browser, any framework, like, okay, it has to be developed, or like, okay, it has to be converted into JavaScript. Now, React provides two ways of development. One is like, you can write it by using plain vanilla JavaScript, or you can use its own language, like I think like it is called as a JXL or something. You can use that language, and you can also develop React applications. Now, on the other hand, Angular 2, if you would like to write Angular 2 application, or like Angular 4 or Angular 5, you can still write it in JavaScript. But the preferred language to develop Angular 2 plus is TypeScript. Okay, so that is one difference. The other difference is React is sometimes called as a library. The reason why it is called as a library is, let's say like, okay, you are using in any application, right? A small HTML5 plus JavaScript application. You can pretty much like, okay, use React as one of the component, or like, okay, you can call it as a library, just like jQuery. And then like, okay, you can start writing the components. You need not like, okay, make the entire app as reactive. Okay, so you can pretty much use it in any HTML5 plus JavaScript app. But whereas in the Angular 2, Angular world, if you go with Angular, you have to stick to Angular. It's not like, okay, I have a HTML and JavaScript, and I want to like, okay, have the Angular library, because it's not a library, it's a framework. And an Angular framework sit on top of whatever you're writing it, right? That is not possible. I mean, that is possible, but you have to do a lot of things. So yeah, that is one difference. Now, the other difference is the key difference. Before Angular 2 became popular, right? So React became very popular. Why I'm saying very popular is because of its key design principle, which we call it as a one-way data flow. Okay, which Angular JS, like when it came into the world, like when it was developed, they started writing with a two-way data binding framework. Okay, but React thought like two-way data binding is somewhat like puts additional burden on the browser. So that is the reason like React said like, hey, no, we won't support two-way data binding, but in fact like we support one-way binding. Okay, one-way data flow. So there is one more difference. Now in the Angular 2 world, it's up to you. Like if you would like to go with a two-way data binding, you still have that provision or that flexibility, or you can also choose one-way data flow. Okay, so that is, it's up to you. Like whatever the design principle, like whatever the design principle, like which you would like to stick to. Fine. So these are the key differences between the React and Angular. Apart from this, there are like minor differences between both the frameworks, but on the broader strokes, right? So these are the differences. I hope like I answered your question.
Hi Shiva, there is 5 in the market, so what is the scope of Angular 2?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat it?
As there is Angular 4 and 5 in the market, so what is the scope of Angular 2?
Okay, so from AngularJS 1.x to Angular 2, you cannot, there is no backward compatibility. That means like you cannot convert AngularJS application 1.x application to Angular 2. But whereas Angular 2 to Angular 4, Angular 4 to Angular 5, all these are like they are pretty much like a versions. Okay, and each one is provides backward compatibility. That means you can run Angular 2 application on Angular 4 by using Angular 4 with Angular 5. There could be few differences with few of the APIs getting deprecated here and there, but on and whole, right? So I mean they are like backward compatible. Got it?
Hi Shiva. So this is Kalpana.
Yes. Go ahead.
So according to you, React.js is like a library. It's not a framework. That is the first thing.
No, I'm not saying it's not a framework. Okay, so I'm not saying it's not a framework. What I'm saying is like it's up to the people's perception, how they take it as. Okay, few people like they take it as a library. Few people they take it as a framework. Now, one more thing. This course is like is completely focused on Angular. I didn't work like in depth with the React.js. So I may not be able to answer like the questions in React.js, but for sure, like if you ask anything in the Angular, yeah, I can definitely help out.
Okay. So it is not Angular JS 4. It's Angular 4.
It's Angular 4. Yeah, it's not. It's not called as a JS because like you'll be writing the programs in TypeScript, which will be eventually converted to JavaScript.
Okay. Okay. So the only language we can write Angular JS application is a TypeScript.
Angular application is for now TypeScript. If you want to write it in JavaScript also, you can write it. Okay, no one is stopping you. But TypeScript is much more flexible for you to write it.
Okay.
Okay. Why TypeScript is flexible? Because like it is close to any object-oriented language. Okay.
Okay. But whereas JavaScript is not.
JavaScript ES6 is somewhat close, but it doesn't provide all the object-oriented features like TypeScript.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In ES7, there are a lot of new features like which are getting added, but it's going to take some time.
Actually, this TypeScript is a new one or it is old one? The TypeScript, because nobody
TypeScript
is.
is a Microsoft supported language. It is new, pretty new. I mean, it's not like something which was existing in around 2003 or 2004. It was recently developed. Yeah.
Okay, and one more question related to Angular and Angular JS. Is there any limitations for large scale applications or anything like that using
Angular
these
2 for sure,
JavaScript frameworks?
it will scale up. Okay, Angular
Okay.
it will definitely scale up. But when it comes to the Angular JS, there are a few things like which you need to take care when you're developing Angular JS 1.x application. Okay. So yeah, that's
Shiva, I have one more question.
Mm-hmm.
So which version is more mature in the market? Is this Angular 2, 4 or 5?
Okay, so Angular 4 is much more mature. See, there is no mature kind of thing, right? Okay, you take any JDK version, JDK 1.4, it is JDK 1.4 and JDK 1.5, right? If you really take those two, right? If you really compare. So what do you say? Like, okay, JDK 1.4 is matured or 1.5?
It's like that. So is there any dependency between Angular 2, Angular 4 or Angular 5?
There is no dependence. Okay, so from the design perspective, there is no change. Okay, there could be changes with the API here and there, but there is no drastic difference. Okay, that means if you develop any Angular 2 application, you can pretty much like run it with Angular 4 or Angular 5.
Means that if I am aware about Angular 2, so I am able to work with Angular 4 also, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I hope like those were the questions. Go ahead, please.
Shiva, Shyam here. It's Angular 1 and 2. It's we can say that it's a platform or it's a language.
Which one? Angular 2 or Angular 1?
Yeah.
Angular JS 1.
Angular JS 1 is it?
Angular JS 1 is a framework. Angular 2, 4, and 5 all are frameworks. It's not a platform. It's not a platform. Framework is different and platform is different.
One more question, Shiva.
Yeah.
Can we mix Angular 4 with React JS?
Okay. You can, you can, but the thing is, like, I prefer not to do, because these two are two different frameworks. Okay. They run with they have their own limitations. Okay, so they can perform well, like, okay, if you do it if you write it in their terms, right? But if you would like to combine, definitely, like, okay, you're going to face a lot of issues with the integration. Okay. When I say integration, right? Let's say, like, okay, a new version of React.js is released, right? You have to come back to this combined framework and you have to change a lot of stuff. Okay. So I prefer not to do that.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Shiva.
Okay.
Hi, Shiva. This I one doubt.
Yes, go ahead, please.
So what are the major difference between like Angular JS and Angular 4? So I mean, like I need to learn first Angular JS, later I need to learn Angular 4, or I need to learn Angular 4 directly.
No, you can learn Angular 4 directly.
So
there is no such dependency. There's no such dependency.
So there's no difference between Angular JS and Angular 4, right?
There is no difference between Angular JS and Angular 4. There is a difference between Angular JS and Angular 4, for sure. Okay, but in order to learn Angular 4, you need not have any prior knowledge of Angular JS.
So, like to learn Angular 4, basic knowledge is only JavaScript and HTML, right?
If you know JavaScript, object-oriented JavaScript, okay, and yeah, that should be sufficient. See, one of the things is like, I won't be teaching like, okay, what a class is, what is an object is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you need to have a basic understanding of any object-oriented language. If you are familiar with Java or C#, that should be fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Shivam.
Yeah. Okay. So the next thing, I hope like you understand the concept of like how this Angular really works, right? So from this presentation, I hope like everyone has an idea, like, okay, how you had to really divide your project into modules, and each module, how like, okay, you can connect these components to. Fine. So let's go through the course, okay, real quick. Let's glance through, and I'll give you a high-level idea like what each chapter does. So let's go through that. Let me open this stuff here. Okay. So this course, like the way I divide it is like, I'll come to the Angular 4 and 5 later on, but the way I divided this course is like, I divided it into two parts. One is the basics, and the other one is the advanced. Okay, and the reason why I divided it is because once you get used to the basics, then you can easily understand the advanced concepts. So I separated out the concepts so that it can easily fit into your mind. Fine. In the first chapter, like, okay, we'll be discussing about the Angular architecture, which we already discussed it here. This is also called as a module/component architecture, and that is what the first chapter really covers about. Okay. And in the second one, which I'm going to give you the details. Actually, it is all about the project setup. I'll be going through a few of the files. I'll explain you like, okay, what it really does when you're setting up the project, right? By the end of the session, I will be giving you all the required software, like which you had to install, so that like, okay, by the next by the next class, like, okay, you will be having all the softwares installed and have the Angular up and running. Okay, so that is what the second covers. The third one, we'll be covering the concept, like, okay, what this one-way data flow is really meant. Okay, so how the one-way data flow really works. So this is the core principle, like, okay, which you have to understand, and the same applies even in the React world also. Okay, so this is a core design principle, and whenever you are developing any of these modules or like the components, component hierarchy tree or something, right? So you have to follow this design principle. As I told you, at the beginning of this meeting, right? So this course is not about learning Angular. This course is about learning the best practices and like how you can really use these best practices in your project, right? And in the fourth, like, we'll be talking about the bindings. There are a couple of bindings like which you have to understand. The bindings are like, they are super easy. All you have to do is like, you have to know like how you have to use it. Fine. And then we'll be moving on to the directives. We'll be discussing about a few directives like ngIf, for, and switch. And after that, like, we'll be discussing about different components. Okay, so what are the smart components? What are the dumb components? How to like, okay, how to make your component as a smart component? How to make your component as a dumb component, right? And also like the inter-component communication, how you can do it by using input and output, right? And also you will also be discussing about the importance of immutability. I guess like, okay, you all are familiar with the immutability concept, right? If not, like, okay, that's fine. I can tell you like what that immutability is, but that's what like we'll be discussing in this section. Fine. After that, we'll be discussing about few lifecycle hooks like ng on init and ng on changes. It's very important and essential for you to know what these lifecycle hooks really does in the Angular development. And we'll be discussing about the forms, how to develop template forms. Basically, there are two types of forms in Angular. One is template, and the other one is reactive forms. But at first, like, okay, I would like to cover template forms. We will be having an understanding of template forms and how you can develop these template forms. There are various things like which you can take care of that in these template forms. You'll be learning those things in detail. After that, we'll be covering services, how to fetch the data from the remote host, how you can use the HTTP service. In fact, it is HTTP client service now with Angular 4 and 5. How to use that service and how to fetch the data, right? And how to write your custom services. You'll also be learning an interesting topic, which is called as an observables. I think, like, I hope you people are heard about the buzzword in the market today, which is nothing but the reactive, right? React to JS, React to Swift, React to Java, right? React to TypeScript, right? So you name anything, any language, right? Okay, they have this reactive prefix. So what this reactive really is meant for, right? So observables are meant for the reactive work. So we'll be touching these observables in detail. That means, like, okay, so let me tell you one thing. Like, most of the Angular components or Angular framework behind the scenes, they use these observables. So observables is one of the important things like which you have to know in Angular world, right? Okay, so if that is covered, I think like these are the basics, like, okay, which you'll be coming across. And the next basic thing is the routing. So Angular is meant for like developing single page applications, right? So if you take any mobile application or like, okay, any modern web-based application, they are all single page application. So first we'll be looking into the details of what is meant by a single page application, and then how you can route from one page to the other page by using this routing module. We'll be discussing that in detail. Okay, and after that, like, okay, how you can debug your Angular applications, which is an interesting topic. And of course, like, this is the main thing, like, okay, which you have to know for any language. Look, or like if you want to debug any Java based application, like, you need to know like how to debug it, right? Otherwise, like, you can't fix the bugs. Same way, like, okay, what are the necessary things, like, okay, which the Chrome developer tools provide and how you can debug the Angular applications. We'll see that in detail. Fine. These are all the basic concepts like which I'll be covering in the basic course. Okay. And after that, we'll be jumping onto the advanced concepts. Or here, the advanced means like, okay, it is truly advanced. Okay. Like, you'll be learning about the content projection, okay, and how you can manage the component children, okay, and all those stuff. There are a few lifecycle hooks also, like, which you'll be learning as part of it, and how you can use it in the real-time projects. Okay, and it's not always like you'll be developing always like static components, right? Sometimes you might need dynamic components. Like, okay, when you really talk about dynamism, right? So you in a regular HTML application, like, you know about inner HTML, right? Or how you can really, like, okay, plop an HTML inside a div, right? So how the dynamic content, like, okay, you can manage. So similarly, like, Angular also has the dynamic components. That means you can create a component on the fly and you can hook it into your application. Okay, so we'll also be looking into that details. And when are these dynamic components really come into the picture, right? So when will you really use it? Okay, if say, like, okay, if you are developing any, or like if you want to develop any component out of some metadata, like, you have to read a JSON, and out of that JSON, like, okay, you have to create a dynamic component. How to, then in that case, like, okay, these dynamic components are really useful, right? Then we'll be discussing on a high level, like, okay, the different references. And one of the most important concepts, or like the important sections in this whole course, is like the whole change detection. How the change detection really works in Angular. Okay, how Angular really fires the events when you click a particular button, right? How it will communicate to the other components and all that sort of stuff, right? So we'll be discussing that in this chapter. Then we'll be discussing about how to develop a custom directive and pipes, Then comes something called as an interesting concept, which is nothing but the reactive forms. Okay. There is a difference between the template forms and the reactive forms. Template forms means it's template driven. Reactive forms is the data driven. Let's say that we have the data. Based upon the data, your form will actually shape up. Okay. That means data is the key in the reactive forms, and these are the forms like which are often used in your projects, not the template forms. Template forms are like simple forms. If you are familiar with the AngularJS 1.x, this is pretty much, that will be pretty much same template forms. But the reactive forms is something new, and it's data focused. Fine. And then the last one is like, okay, the state management. Now, React has something called as a concept called Redux. Okay, React with Redux. Okay, Redux is one of the key things like which made React really powerful. Okay, and Redux is meant for the state management. In this, in similarly, like for Angular, we have something called as an ngrx/store. Okay, so it is actually built by the Redux developers only, and it provides the same kind of mechanism like what Redux provides to the React. So ngrx store is something like, okay, if you get into any of the projects, any modern projects today in Angular world, this is the concept like, okay, which you have to know for sure. Without knowing this ngrx store, I don't think that, okay, you can really survive. So ngrx/store is something like which is important, and most of the projects are like, okay, what are the projects like you develop in Angular 2, they are adopting this ngrx store, and it's a kind of design pattern actually. So and it's very powerful. Fine. Apart from this, I didn't cover one chapter here, which is like how to write your unit test cases with Karma. Okay, so even that, like, okay, we'll be touching in detail. Fine. So this is all about the course which you'll be learning. I hope like you are clear, and I think like, okay, this is an extensive course. You will be covering every aspect of Angular, and yeah, that's all from my side. If you have any questions, it's open. It's open for you. Like you can ask any question.
Shiva, throughout this throughout this training, you will create one project, or finally we have to do one project after completing this course.
Okay, so the way it goes is, right, it's not like, okay, I'll be only like teaching you the theory. Okay, so I can teach you the theory. It's not like that. I'll be showing you an example, like, okay, how this concept is really, how this concept really works. Okay, so and that concept, you can connect that particular dot when you are developing any project in your if at all, if you are working in any real-time project. Okay, so that's how it works. Now, when it comes to the project, right? So there is another course apart from this, which only focuses on the project, and that is Angular plus AWS. Okay, so that is something like still on cards. I'm still working on that stuff, but that is a different course altogether. This covers like, okay, extensively like all the concepts, all the best practices, like, okay, which you have to learn in order to deploy them in the real-time projects. Okay?
Or any kind of projects we cannot do with AngularJS 4, Angular 4.
Angular 4 or Angular 5. Okay.
Angular 4. Yeah.
If you are choosing any UI-based application, you can use Angular for sure. Okay.
Okay.
There is no restriction for that. Okay. But like, I mean, the projects like where you don't require UI, for sure, like, okay, you won't be using Angular, right? Okay. I'll correct that word again. Angular is not only the UI based framework. Okay, you can also generate you can also generate the stuff like which you are presenting on the UI on the browser side. You can also generate it on the server side. Okay.
Okay.
Just like ASPs or ASPs, like okay, how they really work on the server side. Like okay, we used to like generate that stuff, and that used to be pushed to the browser, right, from the server. We can also do that kind of thing by using Angular. So Angular supports both the client side processing and also the client side rendering. And also, if you would like to generate on the server side, you can also do it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Shiva.
Yeah.
How does this Angular help us to develop mobile apps apart from desktop or single page applications?
Right. So, okay. So let me, I forgot the mobile framework, but there is a mobile framework just developed. Yeah, Ionic framework. So Ionic framework is totally meant for developing the mobile applications, and it does use the Angular framework behind the scenes. Fine.
Okay, so does it mean that once we learn Angular, we cannot straight away develop an application that works both on web browser or single page and also as a mobile app, right? We have to adopt Ionic framework to develop mobile apps specifically.
Okay, so Ionic framework, you know about the frameworks, right? I mean, on the client side and an app development, the web app and the mobile app. You know the differences between both of them, right?
Yeah.
So mobile app is, let's say if you want to develop any mobile application or mobile app, there are two ways you can develop. One is like you can go the native route. Native route in the sense, like you can develop it. Let's say you want to develop an Android application. You can develop it by using Android, Java, right? Or iOS application, you can develop it by using Swift. That is one way. Okay. The second way is like taking the hybrid approach. Hybrid approach in the sense, all you need is a browser control, which these platforms really provide. Okay, iOS platform or like the Android platform. Okay, by using that platform, by using that control, you can write your Angular application, which is purely written in TypeScript, right? And eventually it will be converted into JavaScript. So that one you can deploy it in that control, and that's how like okay, the hybrid applications or like hybrid apps will be deployed. Fine. So that is the second approach. There is a third approach, which is still evolving, and which is going to be very hot in the market. Okay, in coming few days. That is nothing but progressive web apps. Okay. So what this progressive web apps really does is you can actually develop a web application. Okay. And for the mobile, you can use this progressive web technique, and make it compatible to the mobile. Okay, you need not do any special development again. Got it? So that is what this progressive web apps really is meant for. Okay, and this is like okay, this is gaining traction nowadays, progressive web apps, because you can develop only once, right? If you develop it for the desktop, you can make it compatible to the mobile without any effort.
So do you see any path forward from Angular team or Google in terms of this progressive web app development, in terms of enhancing the current Angular version towards progressive web app?
Progressive web apps, you can convert any HTML application into progressive web app. Okay, it need not be Angular 2. It could be a reactive, or it could be React application, or any web application. You can have it. You can make it as a progressive web app. Okay.
Okay.
It's not limited to. It's what you will call it as. Okay. It's a paradigm, right? Or we call it as a paradigm. Paradigm means like it's a principle. Okay. It's a kind of a guideline or a principle. Like okay, if you follow those steps, yes, then you can easily make your web application fit into the mobile world. Right? When it comes to the Ionic,
sure.
Ionic framework is a hybrid application, which I told you earlier. Like, okay, this iOS and Android, they do provide the browser controls. And in that browser control, you can deploy your, you can have your web application running. That is nothing but a hybrid application. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
The same question. I got it.
Okay. Fine. Okay, so let's now talk about the required softwares, like, okay, which you need to install. Okay, so let me open this stuff real quick. So what we need in order to run Angular 2 or 4 or 5 applications, right? So for sure, like, okay, you need to have Node.js installed. So Node.js software, you can get it from this link. So if you go to this link, like, it's very easy. In fact, like, all these softwares are pretty easy. Like, they are wizard based. All you have to do is like click next. The software should be installed. Okay, so when you go to this page, like, okay, you can download 894 or like, okay, whatever the LTS is, like, okay, this is the preferred software. This is something on the right hand side. You'll see that is something like, okay, which they are still experimenting it. Okay, so you don't want to like download this one, but in fact, like, you would like to download the LTS version of Node. Okay, and once you download it, all you have to do is, like, if you are a Windows user, all you have to do is click next. Everything should be installed. Okay, you shouldn't have any issues. Fine. So that is the first thing, like, which you have to do. And then how to verify whether Node has been installed or not. All you have to do is, like, go to your command prompt and just type in node-v, which will give you the Node version. Like, you know, if I go to my Node version here, like, if I type in node-v, it's going to tell you the version of the Node, like, which I have it. Okay. You can also use one more command called npm-v, which is a package manager. Okay, and that is 5.5.1. So any one of these commands you can use just to verify Node has been installed properly or not. Okay, so that is the first thing which you have to do. And the next thing is, I would recommend installing Yarn. Yarn is a software which is much more powerful than NPM or Node NPM. NPM is something like a package manager. Okay, what it really does is, like, let's say you have a Node application, right? So let me show that. Okay, so let's say you have a Node application. Every Node application comes with set of Node libraries, like, okay, which has to be installed in order to run that project. So what NPM really does is, let me open this. So what NPM really does is, as you can see here, the dependencies, it will like, okay, download all these dependencies and it will package it for your app. So all those modules, you can see it under the Node modules. Okay, so NPM is basically, it's a package manager, but Yarn is much more powerful than NPM. Why Yarn is powerful is, like, okay, it is much more secure, and it is much more reliable compared to NPM. Okay, it has a better cache mechanism, so you will avoid unnecessary internet hits, okay, to download a particular package. So that's why, like, okay, I prefer Yarn. It's not mandatory, but I prefer, like, okay, installing Yarn. And the way you can install it is, like, simply typing in the command. Once you install the Node, all you have to do is, like, type in this command here: npm install -- global space Yarn, and this should install Yarn for you. Okay, so I recommend installing Yarn. There's one more thing. In few of your operating systems, you could have an issue installing Yarn. It might ask you to download Python also. So I mean, in that case, I would recommend, like, okay, installing Python as well. Okay, for that one, okay, I also provided the link. You can you can download any latest version of Python. If at all, like, okay, if you see any issues installing Yarn, okay, so you can download for the Windows, like, you can download any installer here, I mean, you can download any executable installer, or like it's up to you. You also have for on the Mac OS. This is for the, if someone who is a Mac OS X, they can download it from here. Okay, you can browse through this site. It's very easy, and this one is also a wizard based installation. Now, this one I'm telling, like, okay, if at all, if you are installing Yarn, okay, if you are not opting for Yarn, you want to just stick for Node, then you need not do all this stuff. Okay. The next one is the Angular CLI. I'll be using the Angular CLI. Actually, initially I meant not to use it, but I do see an advantage of using Angular CLI. Okay, I will tell you the advantage. It is very helpful for you, like whenever you are like, if you would like to package all your Angular artifacts with your Java artifacts or Node artifacts or like C# artifacts, right? So this is very helpful because it has something called as a build process, which will eventually like build your Angular application and like, okay, generate all the stuff. Like, let's say for example, I have all this stuff here, right? All I have to do is like, if I run ng-build, I'm just giving an example. We'll be discussing this in detail when you want to package it with a Node application, right? You can use the same concept even for like, okay, when you want to combine with any J2EE application or like any C# application. So once you run this ng-build, it's going to take some time. It's going to create one folder here, which is called as a dist folder. Okay, and within the dist, what we'll have is like, okay, we'll have a bunch of JavaScript files. Now, what those JavaScript files? Those JavaScript files are nothing but whatever the TypeScript files you see, which you develop for Angular, those will be converted into JavaScript files, and that's what we'll have it in this dist folder. So all these files, you need it when you are packaging your end-to-end web application. Okay, so this all comes as part of the build process when you are deploying your final application in production, or like, okay, when you are deploying any application, right? Along with this, you will also have your Java artifacts, right? You will be combining them into one var or one ER file, right? So that's where like, okay, this process is really helpful. That's why I recommend, and this is mandatory, like, okay, you have to install Angular CLI. In order to install Angular CLI, again, all you have to do is like run this command npm install @Angular CLI. Yeah? And that will give you, that will download all the Angular CLI libraries for you. Okay? Angular CLI, to type in. This is what this one is. Okay. So from Angular 2, actually Angular CLI become very popular. Okay. Okay, fine. So these are the three ones. The second one is like somewhat, it's not a mandatory, but it's up to you. But I would recommend that. And the IDE, like which we'll be using for our course, is like the Visual Studio Code, which is nothing but the VS Code. Okay. You can get the VS Code from this link. Don't worry, I'm going to paste all these libraries or like all these softwares in the chat. You can download them. Okay, and this is the VS Code, and the IDE which I'm working on is the VS Code. This is how like it looks like. It is very popular IDE. Apart from VS Code, we have WebStorm from JetBrains, which is also popular, but VS Code is something like free, and it provides all the IDE features. Like it provides IntelliSense. Okay, I mean that means like if you type in something, it's going to correct you. Okay, or like it will provide all the methods, whatever you would like to. So it's pretty friendly. Okay. So that's what this VS Code provides. So you can download it for free, and that's all the softwares you really need. So if you can download all the softwares and get ready, then you can run the source code, like whatever I give it to you. You can run it, and then you can see the output. Any questions here? Any questions here?
Yes, if suppose we don't want to work with the Visual Studio, so what is the alternative tool?
Oh, so the alternative tool, no such limitation of using any VS Code or like any other IDE. You can use Notepad and you can also type in the code. Okay, there's no such restriction, but VS Code provides the intelligence. Like, okay, you don't need to remember all the methods or all the stuff. Once you say dot, and once you say dot, like, okay, it's going to show you all the methods. Like, so what are the method like you are looking for? You can select that method and you can use it. Just like other IDEs, like if you are familiar with any Eclipse or like any Visual Studio Code, this is the same thing. There's nothing different from the other IDEs. Fine. Okay. So you people might be having a question like, okay, hey, I'm not familiar with TypeScript. What should I do, right? So what I'm going to do is, like, before starting our actual Angular application, I'm going to show you, or like I'm going to show you, like, or like teach you your TypeScript language basics, like how to write a class, how to write a class, how you can use different functions like arrows, spread operators, and all this stuff, so that, like, okay, you can get a feel of it, like how we can use it in your Angular project. Okay, so that is the first thing, like, which we'll be doing. So in the next session, we'll be learning the TypeScript basics. Fine. Okay, any more questions? Otherwise, like, I feel like I'm good. We can then discuss about the date and times, like in the weeks, like what are the dates, like, which I prefer to have the session. If you don't have any questions, I can proceed with that information. Okay, as Lakshmi Garu said, like, okay, the course will be starting from Wednesday, and it will be every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 5 days. Okay, and it will be running for a month. So within a month, like, okay, I'll be covering the entire course. So I'll repeat it again. It's Monday, Wednesday, every alternate days on the week. Okay, in the week, like, okay, every alternate days, including Saturday and Sunday. So it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, then Saturday and Sunday, 5 days. Okay, and the timings will be like for those like from India, right? So it will be 7 morning, 7 a.m. Which means, like, for those who are in Central in US, it's going to be 7:30 CST, and for those like who are in the Eastern time, it's going to be 8:30. Okay, so yeah, let me paste the softwares, like, which are required to install, so that you guys can install. Okay, so those are all the required softwares, like, which you have to install it. Okay, that's all. If you have any questions, please ask me. Otherwise, like, we can wind it up.
I have a question. So, like, for all 5 days, it is 7:30 CST. I mean, for CST timing.
Yes.
Yes. That is it. Yeah, I don't want to change the time. The reason I don't want to change the time is I can take it in the morning for English people, but if I stick to a time, that would be good, right?
Today it was 8:30 CST, right? So that's what I was confused.
7:30 CST means 8:30 EST. Okay. And 7 a.m.
Yeah. Sorry for the disturbance. Sorry to disturb you. We'll be sharing, okay, along with time zones, okay, for all, like CST, PST, MST. Okay. With a
I
clear
just sent
time,
it.
we'll be sharing the mail. Okay.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I'll share them.
One more thing. A few people have connected. Okay. And now at the end of the session, I think so as the meeting was full, they could not connect at the starting of the session. So please leave your details. I'll be sharing the course content along with the recorded demo session, even batch details along with the link. Okay. So people who were connected just few minutes back, please leave your details too. Okay. And if you need any other details, you please ping me on the number which I have given to you, or you can mail to the info@career-IT.co.in. So we'll be responding to you. Thank you. Yeah, please you can go ahead.
The next session will be on Wednesday. Okay, it won't be on Monday. So this Monday, because like I want to like prepare a few slides, so that's why like okay, the next session will be on Wednesday. But after this week, it's going to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Okay. Okay, that's all. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for the session, everyone. So we'll be sharing all the details to you in mail. The link. So if anyone knows, yeah. Yeah, Sandeep, your voice is not clear.
I am asking about that. Are you going to share all the required tool link in the mail?
Yeah, tools and all, okay. Trana will be sharing once if you join the course, okay. Just we'll be sharing timings and batch content along with the link, okay. And even recorded demo session also we are going to share.
No, that's not Lakshmi. Shiva Garu just shared some softwares
Yeah,
to
now he
download,
shared
right?
two links.
So we haven't received them. That's what we are.
We'll be sharing those links to you, okay? Don't worry. Okay? We'll be sharing those links to you in mail itself. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah, fine. Thank you. Sure, we'll share it. And one more thing, if we can provide the details for those people only, we can share all the details along with these links. So please provide if anyone hasn't provided.